So I know there's going to be some gems on this one. Define what being a great leader means for somebody like yourself, Ryan. But like, you've been through so much. You've been, in so many different things and whatnot.
Being a great leader to me is being a great father. And I pride myself in trying to exemplify the stewardship that a father would exemplify as a leader. And as opposed to, following kind of the militant leader, there's a lot of military books that have been written on leadership and a lot of military people that, try to teach you how to lead. I seek to try to be the best father that I can to my team, to the movement that I've created, and to exemplify those virtues in the work that I do. I'm not always perfect at it. I get triggered. I make mistakes. I have to seek forgiveness often because I'm not perfect by any means, but I try to be the best father that I can be. And the more that I work on that, the better the leader that I am.
No, absolutely. I feel like I love that you say that because it's a question I think that comes up with a lot of us. You know what I mean? What does that being a good leader look like? You know what I mean? In a team building, it could be just by yourself, building and things like that. But we all have to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
I think with you we talk about being a great leader. What were some of the trials and tribulations that you had to go through, as growing up in this world and things like that springboarded you, to become this entrepreneur?
Well, I had to learn leadership pretty early as a child, but I always had it in me. I had a very difficult upbringing. My dad was an authoritarian, and he did not mind using violence to, instill the rules. And so I had a pretty tough upbringing. A lot was expected of me. And if I didn't get the job done that he wanted me to get done, I took a serious punishment for that. So I was groomed early on to take command and to use aggression in my way of life. I then lost my dad at 13, wound up in a gang. And I was just a young kid, got bullied, beaten up. The older gang members were always, antagonizing me and taking advantage of me. And so I had to learn how to fight, and I had to learn how to gain some power. Otherwise, I would be constantly victimized by rival gangs, by the gang that I was in, by everyone in this environment. So I had to learn how to fight, and I had to learn how to lead pretty quickly. And, over a period of time, I ended up building a team on the gang that I was in of about 100 people. And so I learned some leadership pretty early on. And that wasn't the type of leadership that I operate in now. I operate in conscious leadership. But I'll even tell you that as I started as an executive and started leading companies, I often made a lot of leadership mistakes. And it wasn't until I was about 40 years old that I really got serious about leadership. I had done it and I'd been successful at it, and I'd been many successes and many failures. And when I look back at all of the successes and all the failures, and I found that I was responsible for everything and that there were some things that I lacked as a leader that I needed to work on, I then made it a big focus of my life over the past 5 years to really develop my leadership skills consciously.
No, absolutely. You speak about that, right? What are some of the things that young men could learn, and maybe not to step into that role growing up, maybe coming from a bad home, maybe coming from nothing, maybe not having parents to love and care for them, and not wanting to go down that route, of working with gangs and things like that. But what was one thing you could tell them?
Well, your environment is everything. And if I had a family member that was struggling with their environment, I would do whatever I could to get them out of that environment. I'd take them to Alaska. I'd take them anywhere but that environment, because a child is going to make about 80+% of their decisions based on their peer group and who they're surrounded with. Parents no longer have the same influence over a child when they get into, young adulthood, teen, puberty, and those types of things. So environment is everything in those circumstances. So I would change the environment. The other thing that I would do if I couldn't change my environment is I would get involved in some sort of a work where I was forced to leave the environment for as many of the waking hours a day as possible. So I get a job out of town somewhere as far away from the environment as I could get, and I dedicate 14 hours a day to that job. So these people didn't see me at the house. They didn't see me walking around the neighborhood. They didn't see me. And they knew that I just had to work. And so I couldn't be involved in that environment. That's what I tell people. It's like, you got to find a job, because they'll let you off the hook. They might use peer pressure. They might try to convince you to quit your job, but they'll tend to let you off the hook if you have a job.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're all doing, reinventing ourselves, and defining a purpose.
Yeah.
When did you know it was your purpose to serve this mission, to help and inspire yourself and the family and the friends and all the business associates you've worked with?
I always knew that I was supposed to do something big. And I went through a lot of adversity, so much of it that I saw such a pattern. I was like, there's no way I'm not being trained and groomed to be something important and something special. And so as a young child, when I lost my father, or my mother was an alcoholic, or the house got foreclosed on, or the car got repossessed, or my clothes got taken away from me, or my house got robbed, or I got bullied, or I lost my best friend to a drive-by shooting, I knew that all of this stuff, this adversity, was somehow developing me into something, because no one else had kind of the same pattern that I did. And, and I knew that I had some skills to get through it that other people didn't have. And so I saw it as an opportunity, and I saw it spiritually at an early age. Now, I didn't always understand it, but I saw it as a spiritual opportunity at an early age. And I rose to every occasion. I fell down. I hit rock bottom in multiple different ways, as a child, as an adult, all over the place. But from those experiences, I've gained principles and practices and wisdom and resilience that, are my most valuable assets today.
What is some of the principles that fulfill you right now, currently?
There's a number of them. I have a list of 88 principles that I operate my business by. I have 50 life principles that I operate by. And, I'm a principle-driven person. I could give you a number of them, though. I'm not always where I want to be, but I'm always where I need to be. And so, if I'm sitting here saying this is not exactly where I want to be, I remind myself, but this is where I need to be. Another principle is healing is painful. And so I remind myself that, that the work that I need to do to heal is painful, and that I shouldn't expect it to be easy. There's a ton of leadership principles that I've written, and I actually have a free principles program that I give to everyone I know to try to impart the principles that I have onto as many people as I possibly can. And many of my principles also came from the great leaders that I've had the privilege of interviewing and working with and being mentored by. So I've composed a list, and the way I talk about principles is it's like your operating system. We are supercomputers, and we have all this code. And if we don't intentionally write the code, then we're going to have a lot of unintentional things happening in the operating system. And sometimes that means that the operating system breaks. It breaks down. Sometimes it goes slow, has lack of clarity, doesn't process too well. And so part of the practice is to remove the bad code, the limiting beliefs and misconceptions and lies that you've inherited, and to write new code. And part of that new code base has got to be your new beliefs, your new principles. And then, the once you've done the reconstruction of that code, then you have to operate it.
You speak my tune. It's about boundaries for me too.
Yeah.
And sometimes not having the right friends, maybe family, could be business, could be working. Some people still work a 9 to 5. It is what it is. I work a 9 to 5 and all that. But making those critical changes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like I tell so many people, I'm like, listen, you got to sometimes change the situation, change that environment. And they're like, it's so hard for me to do it. Why do you think it's so hard for people to not want to change out their environment? Because maybe it's the fear that they have, because it could be the fear of missing out. Oh, if I stay here, it's going to get better.
Well, we as human beings, it's code. We just get comfortable in the code that we're operating in. And any change is difficult for us to make. I mean, anything is simple stuff. So what I teach people to do is to start with small, very small, simple changes. Like, read 5 pages of a book every morning. And when you start to do that and you get some traction in that, then you can start to change some other things about your life. But if I ask you to change something huge, like I ask you to, no longer drink, for example, in many cases, people say it's impossible. But if I ask you to change out something very simple in your life, you might say, I could get my hand, I could do that. And then when you do that, you build some self-control, you build some willpower, and then that becomes the fuel to do other changes in your life. So I use this spiritual practice called restriction, where I actually look at the things that I need to restrict in my life, because every one of us has 100% of our life taken up by something. So if we want to achieve our goals, it's not about writing out more goals, just more stuff to do. That's not going to happen. We have to actually make space in our life for those goals to occur. And the way you do that is you restrict. And some of the restrictions might be the news media, it might be your Netflix, might be social media, might be drugs, alcohol, toxic relationships, toxic content, toxic substances. We got to restrict something in order to make the space for what we want to call into our lives. And so this is an ongoing thing that I do all the time. And I have some restrictions that I've carried for many years. I have some restrictions that are brand new. Sometimes it's a season. In this season, I'm going to restrict the news because I'm watching it too much and it's not doing me any good. And maybe later on, I'll get back to watching it for, say, 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day. But for, the season I'm in now, I'm not watching any news. I peek into it occasionally on social. I'll see something pop up here and there, but I'm not on news programming or reading newspapers cover to cover like I used to, because it does me no good in furthering my purpose. So you have to restrict things, and by doing little restrictions, you build your willpower and your self-control, and that's really what change requires. It requires willpower and self-control, and that's what most people lack.
Well, I could speak on this, restricting sports a little bit, NFL season last year. I wasn't really watching a lot of NFL.
Yeah.
I was telling people that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, Rory, why are you not watching NFL? Well, because I got to do a podcast. I have editing to do. I got work to do. So when basketball season came around, playoffs, I watched the most playoffs that I could, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because work was caught up.
Yeah.
But it wasn't finished. It was caught up to where I needed to get to and things like that. Yeah. So I'm happy that you said that and that I can also speak to that too.
Yeah. Something like sports is a prime one. When you think about it, I've had some friends that own some, professional sports teams, and I've had the ability to sit down with some owners and have some dialogue on the subject. You are basically convincing the population to take their time and attention, which is their most valuable asset, and watch people make a rich living. And so we're just watching LeBron make, $100 million a year and become a billionaire. And so we're basically not achieving our objectives and goals and not pursuing our path because we want to watch all these millionaires and billionaires basically achieve their goals. And so when you're watching sports, what you're really watching is someone make a great living at the expense of you making a great living. Now, it doesn't mean you got to throw it all out. But, pick your games wisely and try to draw from them intentionally. Like, I'm watching this because I want to be inspired. I'm going to watch this game and then I'm going to go make sure I, go shoot some hoops and get my workouts going and, and draw from this some inspiration that I can apply to areas of my life that'll help increase my productivity, as opposed to sitting down, watching sports all day long, drinking beer, eating, terribly, and allowing this to be a detriment. You need to turn it into a positive.
Absolutely. And I feel like this is where I can spin it back to you and look at where you having the fastest growing company, right, on the New York Stock Exchange. What did that mean for you, and how welcoming was that for you, and what did you learn from it?
Well, I grew too fast.
Okay.
If I could go back in time, I would have slowed everything down and rode the wave for 10 years as opposed to 2 years. But at the time, I wanted to ride the wave. I wanted to break records. I wanted to be number one. I wanted to get the biggest payday. I had the biggest earnout. And I was all about, my ego thought, if I could make $1 billion in 2 years, I can make $1 billion every year. And eventually I can make $1 billion a day kind of thing. Right. And I've been humbled since in the journey. It was a great learning exercise to go through. And I have a very fast growing company now because I exited that company. And so my company now is growing at, double-digit compounded growth month over month. And that's exactly how I got my last company to grow. But this time around, I'm being much more disciplined and vigilant in how I scale and how I recruit and how I hire and the key initiatives. And I'm much more tempered. I'm not seeking to grow at all costs. I'm seeking to grow in a way that is sustainable. And I tell people, a lot of people don't realize, entrepreneurship is like building houses. My first couple of houses I built, were not adjusted for seasons. They were not built to be sustainable. They were big and beautiful, and by all, and I sold them for a lot of money, but they weren't designed with a real strong foundation and an architecture that is, going to be a masterpiece. They were like temporary designs to exploit an opportunity. Now what I'm building is a masterpiece. And partly that's because of my age. I'm about to be 45 years old. It takes a good 10 years to build a substantial house in the field of entrepreneurship. It's 5 years in the foundation. And I've talked to great entrepreneurs, and every one of us, we all say the same thing. It's like 5 years, even when you start with a ton of money, even when you've got 100 million in the bank, it's still going to take you 5 years to figure out how to do what you need to do and to do it well. And then once you build that foundation, then the house goes up pretty quickly. So you got to plan on a 10-year build. Now, in some cases, it happens fast. You build much faster. Sometimes that's luck, sometimes that's timing, but in all, you should plan on a 10-year time horizon to build something pretty significant. And so for me, that 10 years will put me right at about 50, 55 years old or so, and then we'll figure out what happens then. But I'm on a 10-year build right now, where before I was on I'd build with the intention of a couple of years.
Oh, I love that you say that, man. What's the name of the company right now that you're
It's
working
called
with?
AlterCall, and we help people alter their lives to answer their calling. And so I'm thrilled to be able to work with people. We're investing in AI technology and biosensors, and our objective is to help the world heal at scale. We have psychotherapists, we have coaches, we have a whole variety of resources to entrepreneurs to help them, get through whatever's blocking them, and to, get to the level where they're able to operate at their highest self.
I know you come into a lot of different, folks that want to pursue that entrepreneurship. And I heard where you spoke there about the making the money very, very quickly. If there's one thing you could tell the audience that are listening to this, what's that one mistake? Because you said it. A lot of people think you can grow quickly, yes. But when that money starts coming in, you might lose track of the vision. You may not be able to have the retention as far as maybe could be with customers and things like that. And you just want to keep scaling and scaling and scaling, where it's like, $1,000 becomes $2,000, $2,000 becomes this. What's those little tips that you could give them to not want to overlook what's going on?
The number one tip I would give is you have to grow as a leader. You have to grow your character. You have to grow your skills, and you have to do that nonstop. And when times are really good and you're growing, you tend to lose sight of what got you there. What got you there was, a strong work ethic, a desire for growth, a humbleness to you. And then all of a sudden you get there, and I know this because I've been there, and all of a sudden you quit growing, you get egotistical, and, you change once you get to the top of the mountain. And so the things that got you to the top of that mountain, the key is to continue doing those things even when you're starting to grow at an extensive rate. The other aspect of it is you have to surround yourself with great people. You have to really pay close attention to how you give out equity, who you partner with, the structure of your business. A lot of those things can hinder growth or can ultimately be disruptive later on when you start to grow. So in my work with entrepreneurs, I mentor a number of very significant entrepreneurs that have, $100 million plus businesses. And I've seen, meltdown and breakdown, and organizations become stagnant or, go from highly profitable situations to losing a ton of money. And so there's some principles and practices that you can implement in your own personal life, and then you demand their implementation in your business and among your team. And as a result of that, you can continue to grow, and you can continue to, provide the value that you're capable of providing as an entity and as a team. But it all starts with you and your commitment to growth, and then getting team members aligned with that, and then making sure that the company exemplifies that.
Love that you say that. You speak about ego, because a lot of people get ego and confidence confused. When did you flip from ego to confidence?
Ooh. I was vacillating between ego and confidence. I didn't know the distinction between the two. There's some things that I was really good at, and I look you in the eyes and say, lead, follow, or get out of the way, because I got this, and I'm going to go get this done. And that was true confidence that came from my soul level, where I knew I'm the one for this job. And then there was ego, where I'd say, oh, I can do this or I can do that. And I'd go, do it, and it'd flop or it'd fail, or I'd mismanage it, or I wouldn't fully invest in it. So in order for you to really understand the ego, you got to have a strong dose of it. You don't get there without, experiencing the negative consequences of the ego, and often the unintended consequences. But once you get, to a place where you've operated in the ego realm, then you can kind of detach yourself from that and say, is there a better way? And there really is. My confidence now, I would say, is more of a holy audacity. Like, I know that when God guides, God provides. I know that I've been chosen and trained and tooled in a variety of different subjects. I'm a unique individual. And if I'm called to do a job and I'm chosen to do the job, I'm going to get qualified to do that job as I go, and the job's going to get done. Now, in order to do that at the spiritual level that I operate now today, the first step is you have to put yourself in a position of service, which is the opposite of ego, meaning I'm here to serve, right? I'm on this podcast to serve your audience, to serve you, to make a new friend. I'm not here to brag about, all the stuff that I've done. It's like, if there's anything that I can do to serve, I'm here to serve. And then you have to surrender. And surrender is saying, I don't know exactly what's going to happen, God. That's on you. There might be one person listening to this that, is going to call me up, and I'm going to work with them to build $1 billion company. Or it might be that I just got to practice my message and refine it and get better at it. And then, later on down the road, I'm going to be delivering a message to that one person. I have no idea what God's plan is. I'm just here to serve and surrender to it.
Is there that one scripture for me? I have the Bible open. I'm in my later 30s, and the Bible stays open beside my bed.
Nice.
For the last now 22 years, right? Now I know people are listening to this in like 22 years. Okay, so if he's in his 30s, later 30s, how old is he? Another talk for another day.
Yeah.
Is there that one scripture you go to, right?
Well, I tend to read the Psalms a lot. I tend to open up that and go deep into there. King David has been a hero of mine. I have a similar amount of failure and ego and pride and mistakes. So I really relate to him a lot. But I relate to all of the stories, Joseph, of course, Jesus. I deeply follow Jesus as a Christian, but I like to find the people that he was inspired by and learned from, as the fact that, he was a rabbi himself. So Joseph, Job, Joshua, David. I love learning from the stories of failure and of people overcoming that. And what I loved is that God chooses the underdog. He chooses the unqualified, and he qualifies that person. He doesn't choose the righteous, holy, perfect person. He chooses the one that gets it wrong, and he qualifies that person for the job. And so I love those stories in the Bible because I have gotten it wrong a whole lot. I'm an underdog in many ways. And as a result of that energy, I've been able to, get to some places where I can be an inspiration to people.
Love that you say that, my friend. I feel like it also goes into the importance of breathwork.
Yeah.
Right? And that's important for you. Speak on the importance of breathwork and how can we basically bring it into our everyday life?
Well, to breathe is to respire, and to respire is to inspire. And God is the breath that we take. Every time that we breathe, God is breathing love into us and life into us. We can't do it without it. And the magic of the air that is all around us, we take for granted every single day, as we often take God for granted every single day. So learning how to breathe, breathing deeply. Now, that's the spiritual side of it. But to inspire is to respire, and to respire is to inspire. I'll tell you, though, on the science side of it, we forget how to breathe. And in the AI research that I've been doing, we've found correlations between a person's respiration rate and their level of anxiety or their level of confusion or their lack of presence. And so if we really start mastering the biology from the inside out, we can actually shift our mentality and our mental state. A lot of entrepreneurs deal with anxiety, we deal with depression, we deal with substance abuse, we deal with all kinds of challenges to a degree that's triple that of what society has to deal with. Suicide rates. I mean, entrepreneurs are some of the most mentally unhealthy people in the world. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we don't have, fundamental practices of breathwork and of meditation and of prayer, and we don't eat correctly and we don't take care of our bodies. And as a result of that, we collapse mentally, physically, and spiritually.
Yeah. And I know, like, it's some days, some people are like, how do you do this? How do you go to work, come home, do a podcast, edit the podcast, and all this? And I say, it's about passion for me. It's all about passionate. You know what I mean? It's not about the money. It's about the passion. That I know that, again, like you spoke, it's about serving.
Yeah.
That's why I do this. That's why I speak about it.
Well, just to reflect back onto you, you have a darn good voice, man. So I would say that you have an innate gift that you are bringing to this world. You have a calm demeanor. You have a strong voice. You could be like a late night FM radio person, talking to people. How you doing tonight? Right? You got that voice, man. So you have no choice, I bet, but to bring this thing and to manifest your soul's purpose. And podcast is a vehicle for you.
No, thank you, man. I appreciate that. And I receive that. Honestly, I do. Truly do. Before we go, this book, right? The Nothing to Lose, Everything to Gain. The audience members that are listening to this right now, why do they need to check out that book ASAP? Because I'm going to have to get myself a copy also too. You know what I mean?
The book, it turned into a bit of a viral phenomenon before the age of the social media. And it's since selling around the world, and to this day it continues on. It's 11 years in print. So it's one of my favorite accomplishments. It's #1 New York Times bestselling book in multiple languages. And it's my story of how I was able to overcome adversity to become successful. And I give you insights into what I'm thinking when I'm in the boardroom negotiating against billionaires, or what it's like when I have to make this firing decision or hiring decision, or, my decision process as I'm, facing some, serious life challenges and managing some business adversity as well. So it's a real authentic look into my head at that particular time. And you'll extract from the narrative a lot of principles and practices that allowed me to utilize the mindset of having nothing to lose to my advantage. The people with everything to lose are the ones really in our society that have a disadvantage, but they're the ones holding the most space. The people with great jobs and the houses and all of this stuff, they're the ones that are holding the space in society and dictating how society works. But a young person with a nothing to lose mindset, or an old person with a nothing to lose mindset, is a force of nature that, when properly applied, can do quite a positive disruption and on the planet.
No, absolutely. And this is an audiobook too for him?
Yeah, Nothing to Lose is an audiobook. And then my follow-up to Nothing to Lose is called Rock Bottom to Rockstar, Lessons from the Business School of Hard Knocks. That's available where all books are sold. And then also for some of your listeners, there's a documentary on YouTube that is free, and it's called Nothing to Lose, the documentary, which will give you some powerful insights to my entrepreneurial journey.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, Ryan Blair. Wow. Breathtaking. Where can everybody check you out, my man?
Just catch me at Instagram. I'm at Real Ryan Blair if you want to connect personally. And if you want to learn more about AlterCall, just go to AlterCall.com.